The first thing my mother said after my grandfather's funeral was, "Your brother deserves the house." She said it while standing beside his coffin. I remember staring at her, certain I had misunderstood. "What?" She didn't even look embarrassed. "Your brother has a family now. He needs stability." My older brother Ryan stood behind her with his arms folded. My father nodded. "It makes sense." I looked at the three of them. Then I looked at the wooden box sitting on the table beside Grandpa's flowers. The box containing the will? The will that Grandpa had spent months telling me would change my life. I had assumed that when he died, my family would be sad. I had assumed we'd grieve together. I had assumed the years I'd spent caring for him would finally be acknowledged. Instead, they had already decided what they were going to take from me. What they didn't know was that I had spent the previous 10 years keeping a secret Grandpa had begged me never to reveal, unless my family betrayed me badly enough, that the truth became necessary. I had promised him I would keep it. For 10 years, I kept that promise, until the day my parents gave my inheritance to my brother. And when they finally discovered what I'd been protecting all those years, my father sat down, covered his face with both hands, and whispered, "Oh my God, what have we done?" My name is Claire Bennett. And before I tell you what my family did to me, you need to understand something. I never wanted their money. I wanted their love. That was the one thing I could never seem to inherit. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Our house was small, white, and surrounded by maple trees. My father, Michael, owned a hardware store downtown. My mother, Susan, worked as a bookkeeper. And my brother Ryan was 3 years older than me. From the outside, we looked like an ordinary American family. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, birthday cakes, summer barbecues, family vacations. But inside our house, there was an invisible ranking system. Ryan was first. I was second. I didn't understand it when I was little. I only knew that when Ryan wanted something, my parents found a way to give it to him. When I wanted something, they told me to be patient. Ryan got the new bicycle. I got his old one. Ryan got the bedroom with the larger closet. I got the smaller room. Ryan got a new car when he turned 16. I got a lecture about responsibility. When Ryan wanted to attend an expensive college, Dad took out a loan. When I said I wanted to attend the same school, Mom told me, "Claire, we can't afford everything for both of you." I remember standing in the kitchen holding my college acceptance letter. "I got a scholarship," I said. Mom smiled. "That's wonderful, but I still need help with housing." She sighed. "Maybe you should go somewhere closer." I looked at her. Ryan went 4 hours away. He's different. That sentence stayed with me. He's different. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know why he was different. I only knew that somehow, whatever Ryan wanted always seemed more important. There was one person who never made me feel second. My grandfather, Thomas Bennett. Grandpa lived about 20 minutes from us in an old brick house with a huge backyard. He was a retired contractor. He could fix almost anything. A broken chair, a leaking pipe, a lawnmower, a relationship. Well, almost. He used to tell me that people were like houses. You can spend years decorating the outside, he'd say, but what matters is what's holding the walls together. When I was 13, I asked him why Dad was always harder on me. Grandpa didn't answer immediately. He sat beside me on his porch. Then he said, "Sometimes parents don't realize they're treating their children differently. Does that mean they love Ryan more?" He looked at me. "No." "Then why does it feel like it?" Grandpa sighed. "Because love and behavior aren't always the same thing." I didn't understand. I would later. After college, I returned home. I had a degree in accounting and a job offer from a regional company. Ryan, meanwhile, had started a landscaping business. Dad loved talking about it. "My son is an entrepreneur," he'd tell people. I was proud of Ryan. I really was. But he was terrible with money. His business made good money one month and lost money the next. He bought expensive trucks. He leased equipment. He hired employees too quickly. Whenever things went wrong, Dad helped him. Whenever I offered advice, Ryan would say, "I'm not interested in being lectured by my little sister." So I stopped. Then Grandpa got sick. He had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. The doctors told us he had maybe a year. He lived for another 3. I spent most of those 3 years taking care of him. I drove him to appointments. I picked up his prescriptions. I cooked meals. I cleaned his house. I sat beside him when he couldn't sleep. My parents visited. Ryan visited sometimes, but I was there almost every day. At first, I didn't mind. He was my grandfather. I loved him. One evening, after a particularly difficult doctor's appointment, Grandpa looked at me and said, "You're tired. I'll sleep tonight." "That's not what I mean." I smiled. "I know." He reached for my hand. "Claire, there's something I need you to understand." "What?" "When I'm gone, people may behave differently." I frowned. "Who?" "Your family." I laughed. "My family loves you. They do." "Then why are you saying that?" "Because grief makes people strange." He looked toward the window. "And money makes people stranger." I didn't know what he meant. A few weeks later, he asked me to help organize some paperwork. His estate was complicated. He owned the house, several rental properties, a small commercial building, investments, and a piece of land outside town that had been in our family for decades. I assumed all of it would be divided equally. That's what Grandpa had told me. "Fairly," he'd said. "Not equally." "Fairly?" I didn't ask questions. Then one afternoon, he handed me a sealed envelope. "Don't open this." I laughed. "You're giving me a secret envelope and telling me not to open it?" "Exactly." "When can I open it?" "When you believe you need to." "What does that mean?" "You'll know." I put it in a drawer. I forgot about it. At least I tried to. A year later, Grandpa's health declined quickly. I was with him during his final week. My parents visited. Ryan came once. On his last evening, Grandpa asked everyone to leave the room except me. He was weak. His voice was barely audible. "Claire, I'm here. I need you to promise me something." "Anything? Don't let them take what isn't theirs." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He reached for my hand. "The envelope." My heart began beating faster. "I still have it." "Good. What is it?" "You'll understand." "Grandpa!" He smiled. "You've always been the one who looks deeper." I started crying. "Please don't talk like that." He squeezed my hand. "Promise me." "I promise. Even if they hate you?" I swallowed. "I promise. Even if they call you selfish?" "I promise. Even if you have to walk away from them?" I couldn't speak. He looked into my eyes. "Promise." "I promise." He smiled. Then he closed his eyes. He died the next morning. I was holding his hand. I was 29 years old, and something inside me broke that day. At his funeral, hundreds of people came. Former employees, neighbors, friends, people whose homes Grandpa had repaired, people he had helped quietly, people he had never expected anything from. I remember standing beside his coffin thinking, everyone knew what kind of man he was. Why couldn't my family see it? The answer came 2 days later. We were sitting in Grandpa's living room. His attorney, Mr. Reynolds, placed a folder on the table. My parents sat together. Ryan sat beside Dad. I sat across from them. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "I'll begin with the personal items." He distributed several small gifts. Grandpa's watch went to Dad. His wedding ring went to Mom. A collection of antique tools went to Ryan. Then he looked at me. "Claire, your grandfather left you his personal library and workshop." I smiled. That felt like Grandpa. Then came the financial assets. The room went quiet. Grandpa had left more money than we expected. Much more. His estate was worth approximately $4.8 million. Ryan's eyes widened. Mom stared at Dad. Mr. Reynolds explained the distribution. Ryan would receive one of the rental properties. My parents would receive another. Several charitable donations had been made, and I was named beneficiary of the commercial property and a significant investment account. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to change my life. Then Dad interrupted. "Are you sure?" Mr. Reynolds looked at him. "Yes." Dad's face hardened. "But the house?" "The house belongs to Claire." Silence. I looked at my father. He looked at me. Mom suddenly said, That doesn't seem fair. I felt my stomach tighten. Mr. Reynolds looked confused. Mrs. Bennet, the will is very clear. Claire doesn't need a house. I stared at her. Mom! Ryan leaned forward. I need it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why? My business. What does your business have to do with Grandpa's house? Ryan sighed. You know how expensive everything is. I laughed. Grandpa's house isn't a business asset. It could be. Dad spoke. Claire, your mother and I think Ryan should have the house. I stared at him. Grandpa left it to me. We know. Then why are we having this conversation? Mom's voice became softer. Because Ryan has children now. He had 2 sons. They were 6 and 3. I love your nephews, I said. Then think about them. I couldn't believe it. You want me to give them Grandpa's house? We're asking you to do the right thing. Mr. Reynolds interrupted. I need to clarify something. The property is legally Claire's. Dad looked at him. We understand. No, I don't think you do. Mr. Reynolds closed the folder. Any transfer would require Claire's consent. My mother stared at me. Claire. I shook my head. No. Ryan's face changed. You're really going to do this? Do what? Take the house. Grandpa gave it to me. You don't have kids. I stared at him. That doesn't mean I don't deserve anything. Mom whispered. Your brother needs it more. I stood up. I spent 3 years taking care of Grandpa. Ryan stood too, and I loved him too. I never said you didn't. You act like you're the only one who mattered to him. No. I looked at my family. You're the ones acting like that. Dad's face turned red. Enough. No, Dad. My voice shook. But I'm done pretending this is normal. I walked out. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Within 2 weeks, the pressure began. My mother called constantly. She cried. She accused me of dividing the family. She said Ryan was struggling. She said his children deserved a stable home. My father said I was being selfish. Ryan stopped speaking to me. Then one afternoon, he came to my apartment. You need to sign the transfer papers. No. He slammed the papers onto my kitchen table. Why are you doing this? Because it's mine. You're not even using it. I'm not required to. He stared at me. You've always been like this. Like what? Selfish. I laughed. Ryan, I paid your college credit card debt. That was different. I paid for your truck repair. You offered. I loaned Dad $20,000 when the store needed a new roof. You had money. I helped Mom pay her medical bills. You're keeping score now? I stared at him. No. Then stop acting like a victim. He grabbed the papers. You'll regret this. He left. 3 days later, I got a call from my mother. Claire, your father had a heart attack. Everything stopped. I drove to the hospital. Dad was in intensive care. Ryan was there. Mom was crying. I spent the night in a hospital chair. For the first time in weeks, the inheritance didn't matter. The house didn't matter. The money didn't matter. Dad was my dad. I loved him. The next morning, the doctor told us he was stable. I went into the hallway. Ryan followed. You need to sign the papers. I stared at him. What? The house. My father just had a heart attack. Exactly. I felt something cold move through me. What is wrong with you? You know how much stress he's under. You're threatening me with Dad's health? No. Yes, you are. He walked away. I didn't sign. But I began questioning myself. Was I being selfish? Was Grandpa wrong? Was the house worth destroying my family? I went home. I opened the drawer. The envelope was still there. For 10 years, I had never opened it. Now I did. Inside was a handwritten letter. And beneath the letter was a flash drive. I read the first line. Claire, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I sat down. The letter was several pages long, and by the time I reached the bottom, I was crying. Grandpa explained something I had never known. The house wasn't simply a house. It had originally belonged to his father. And years earlier, Grandpa had discovered that my father had been secretly borrowing money from him. Not for himself, for Ryan. Again and again, Grandpa had confronted Dad. Dad admitted that Ryan had significant financial problems. But there was more. Grandpa had also discovered that Ryan had been using my name to obtain credit. I froze. I kept reading. Grandpa had confronted him. Ryan denied everything. Grandpa hired a private investigator. The investigator discovered that several accounts had been opened using my personal information I had never known. Grandpa had quietly paid the debts to protect my credit, but he hadn't stopped there. He had established a trust designed to protect certain assets from being controlled by my family. The commercial property, the investment account, and the house, all of them were legally protected. The will wasn't the whole story. The flash drive contained documents, bank records, copies of emails, legal correspondence, and something else, a recording. I clicked it. I heard Grandpa's voice, then my father's, then Ryan's. They were talking about money. Ryan was furious. "I need the house," Dad said. "Your sister won't give it to you." Ryan replied, "She doesn't deserve it." Dad said, "She took care of your grandfather." Ryan laughed. "She did it because she wanted the inheritance." I covered my mouth. That wasn't true. Not even close. Then Grandpa's voice came through the recording. "Ryan, you're wrong," Ryan said. "You've always favored Claire." Grandpa answered, "I favored the child who needed less money." Silence. Then Grandpa said something that I would never forget. "I gave Claire responsibility because I knew she would use it to protect the family. I gave you opportunities because I believed you would eventually learn responsibility." Ryan said, "So she gets everything?" "No." Grandpa's voice became firm. "She gets what she earned the right to protect." My hands were shaking. Then Dad said something. "Dad, please don't punish Ryan." Grandpa replied, "I am not punishing him. You're humiliating him." "No, I'm preventing him from destroying himself." Then came the sentence that changed everything. "If you ever give Claire's inheritance to Ryan, you will lose both of your children." I stopped the recording. I couldn't breathe. Grandpa knew. He knew exactly what my family would try to do. And he had prepared for it. The next morning, I called Mr. Reynolds. "I need to talk to you." He sounded unsurprised. "I was wondering when you would." My heart stopped. "You knew?" "Yes." "How much?" "Everything your grandfather instructed me to know." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he asked me not to unless you believed your rights were being threatened." I sat silently. Then I asked, "What happens if my parents transfer the house to Ryan?" "They can't." "What?" "The house is protected by a trust." I stared at the wall. "What about the commercial property?" "Protected." "The investment account?" "Protected." "So why did Grandpa make it look like everything was in the will?" "Because he wanted to see what your family would do." I felt sick. "You mean he knew they would try?" "He suspected." "And now? Now we know." I asked him to send me everything. He did. I spent the entire weekend reading. There were records of payments Grandpa had made to help my family. There were loans Ryan had never repaid. There were emails between Dad and Grandpa. There was evidence that Ryan had opened accounts using my information. And there was one document that broke my heart. A letter from Grandpa to my father. It said, "Michael, I love you. But loving you does not mean allowing you to make the same mistakes forever." I cried for hours. Not because I had inherited millions. Because my grandfather had spent years trying to protect all of us. And nobody had listened. I went to the hospital. Dad was recovering. I sat beside his bed. He looked at me. "You came." "Of course." He looked away. "Ryan told me you won't give him the house." "No." He sighed. "Claire? Dad, did Grandpa ever tell you about the trust?" His face changed. "What trust?" I knew immediately. He didn't know. I showed him the documents. His hands began shaking. "What is this?" "Grandpa's plan." He read. Then he looked at me. "Where did you get this?" "He left it for me." Dad stared at the papers. Then he whispered, "I didn't know." "I believe you." "Ryan—" He stopped. I knew what he was thinking. "Did Ryan know?" Dad shook his head. "I don't know." I handed him the flash drive. "Listen, We played the recording. My father listened. His face slowly collapsed. When Ryan's voice came through the speaker, Dad closed his eyes. When Grandpa spoke, Dad began crying. When the recording ended, Dad covered his face. Oh, God. I sat beside him. He whispered, "What have we done?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. A few days later, Ryan came to the hospital. Dad confronted him. "Did you know about Claire's accounts?" Ryan froze. "What?" "Answer me." Ryan looked at me, then at Dad. "I don't know what you're talking about." Dad held up the documents. Ryan's face went pale. "You opened credit accounts in her name." "No. Your grandfather found the records." "He was old." Dad slammed his hand against the table. "Don't you dare." Ryan stepped back. "You're believing her?" Dad stared at him. "I'm believing my father." Ryan looked at me. "You've been waiting for this." "For what?" "To make everyone hate me." I shook my head. "No, Ryan." "Then why did you keep that letter?" "Because Grandpa asked me to." "You knew." "I didn't know what was inside." He laughed. "You expect me to believe that?" I looked at him. "I spent 10 years protecting a secret I didn't even understand." "What secret?" I didn't answer. He looked at Dad. "Tell me." Dad couldn't speak. Ryan turned toward the door, then stopped. "What did Grandpa know?" I finally said. "Enough." He left. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my brother's eyes. The next morning, Mr. Reynolds contacted us. There would be a formal meeting. Everyone would attend. My parents, Ryan, me, and the trustee. We sat around a conference table. Mr. Reynolds placed a thick folder in front of Ryan. "Mr. Bennett, these are the documents concerning the misuse of your sister's identity." Ryan looked at them. "I didn't do this." The trustee spoke. "The evidence is substantial." Ryan looked at Dad. "Dad?" Dad looked down. "I can't defend this." Ryan's face changed. "Mom?" Mom was crying. "I didn't know." Ryan stood. "So you're all turning against me?" I stood too. "No." He looked at me. "I don't want you destroyed." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because you need to face what you did." He laughed bitterly. "You sound like Grandpa." I looked at him. "Maybe that's the point." Ryan walked out. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Ryan's attorney. He was threatening legal action. He claimed Grandpa had been mentally incompetent when the trust was established. He claimed I had manipulated Grandpa. He claimed the estate had been unfairly distributed. It hurt. Not because I was afraid. Because my brother was willing to destroy everything to get money. Mr. Reynolds told me not to panic. "Your grandfather planned for this." "Of course he did." He smiled sadly. "Thomas knew his family." The legal battle lasted 8 months. During that time, Ryan's business collapsed. His debts were exposed. The accounts opened using my identity were investigated. He was forced to repay money. He lost his house. He and his wife separated. And his children stayed with their mother. I could have celebrated. I didn't. I understood what Grandpa meant. Sometimes consequences aren't revenge. They're simply the result of choices. I continued working. I kept the house. But I didn't live there. Instead, I renovated it. I turned it into something Grandpa would have loved. A community center. Free workshops. Financial literacy classes. Job training. A small library. A place where young people could learn skills. I named it the Thomas Bennett Community House. The opening day was emotional. Hundreds of people came. Former neighbors. Former employees. Local business owners. Families. At the end of the ceremony, I stood in the old living room. The room where my family had argued about inheritance. Now children were reading books. Adults were attending classes. A young man was learning woodworking in Grandpa's workshop. I looked around, and for the first time I understood. The inheritance wasn't the money. It was what I did with it. Months later, my mother called. "Claire?" "Hi, Mom. I need to tell you something." "What?" "Your father wants to apologize." I was quiet. "He says he doesn't expect you to forgive him?" "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be." That surprised me. Mom? Yes? Are you okay? She started crying. I don't know. We talked for an hour. She admitted something. She had always compared me to Ryan. She had believed that because he was struggling, she owed him more. She had confused helping someone with rescuing them. I thought you were strong, she said. So you thought I didn't need you? Yes. I closed my eyes. I needed you too. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. It took me a long time to answer. I'm sorry too. For what? For believing I had to earn your love. She cried. So did I. We didn't fix everything that night. But we started. A few weeks later, Dad came to the community center. He stood outside the door for nearly 10 minutes before entering. I saw him. Hi, Dad. He smiled weakly. Hi. He looked around. This is beautiful. Thank you. He touched one of the old wooden shelves. Your grandfather would have loved this. I think so. He sat down. I need to tell you something. I waited. I failed you. My throat tightened. You failed both of us, I said. He nodded. But I failed you differently. I looked at him. I thought because you were strong, you didn't need protecting. He wiped his eyes. You were always the responsible one. That wasn't fair. No. He looked down. I'm sorry. I sat beside him. I forgive you. He started crying. But, I continued, things can't go back to the way they were. I know. I don't want to be treated like the responsible child anymore. You won't be, and I don't want Ryan's problems to become mine. They won't, Dad nodded. I promise. I believed him. Not completely, but enough. Then he reached into his jacket. He pulled out a small envelope. This was in Grandpa's desk. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Me and Grandpa. I was about 17. We were standing in his workshop. On the back, Grandpa had written, Claire, someday you'll understand that being trusted is worth more than being wealthy. I cried. Dad put his hand on my shoulder. He knew. Yes. He always knew. Yes. That night I went home and sat in the quiet. I thought about the girl I had been at 17. The girl who believed being useful was the same thing as being loved. The woman I had become at 29. The woman who had learned to say no. The woman who had learned that family could hurt you, but also that family could change. A year passed. Ryan eventually contacted me. He didn't ask for money. That was the first sign that something had changed. His message was simple. I owe you an apology. I don't expect anything from you. I just want to say I'm sorry. I didn't answer immediately. I waited 2 days. Then I wrote, I accept your apology. I hope you build a good life. He replied, thank you. Nothing more. And that was enough. I later learned that Ryan had started working for a construction company. He was making less money than before, but he was paying his debts. He had started seeing his children regularly. He was rebuilding. Slowly. Honestly, for the first time, I was proud of him. Not because he had become successful, because he had stopped running from his mistakes. 3 years after Grandpa died, my parents visited the community center for Thanksgiving. We had a long table. My mother brought pie. Dad brought turkey. Ryan came with his sons. I hadn't seen them in months. The younger one ran into my arms. Aunt Claire! I hugged him. The older one showed me a wooden toy car he had made. Dad taught me. I looked at Ryan. He smiled. You did? Yeah. I smiled back. It's good. We sat down. For the first time in years, nobody talked about money. Nobody talked about inheritance. Nobody talked about who deserved what. We talked about school, work, football, food, life. At one point, my mother looked around the table. I wish Grandpa could see this. I smiled. I think he can. Dad raised his glass. To Grandpa, everyone raised theirs. To Grandpa. After dinner, I walked outside. The maple trees were bare. The air was cold. Ryan followed me. Claire, I turned. Yeah? I never told you something. What? I found the letter Grandpa wrote to Dad. My heart skipped. What letter? The one where he said you were the one who could protect the family. I didn't know what to say. Ryan looked at me. I used to think that meant you were his favorite. And now? Now I think it meant he trusted you. I smiled. He did. Ryan nodded. I understand why now. We stood silently. Then he said, I was angry because I thought you had everything. I looked at him. You had things I never had. What? The freedom to fail. He looked confused. You could fail and Dad would save you. I continued. I couldn't. He looked down. I never thought about that. I know. I thought you were lucky. I thought you were lucky. He laughed softly. Maybe we were both wrong. Maybe. He looked toward the building. You really don't care about the money anymore, do you? I smiled. Not like I used to. What changed? I thought about Grandpa. Understanding what it was for. What was it for? I looked through the window at the people inside. People. He nodded. Then we went back inside. Years later, people would ask me if I regretted what happened. Did I regret fighting my family? Did I regret keeping the inheritance? Did I regret refusing to give Grandpa's house to Ryan? No, but not for the reason they expected. I didn't win because I kept the money. I won because I stopped believing that love required me to surrender everything. I learned that boundaries aren't cruelty. I learned that saying no doesn't make you selfish. I learned that forgiveness isn't the same as trust. And I learned that sometimes the person who seems to have received the least is actually the one who was given the greatest responsibility. My grandfather had trusted me with something far more valuable than his estate. He trusted me with the truth. And for 10 years, I protected it. I kept that secret because he asked me to. I didn't know it would one day save me from losing everything. But it did. The inheritance my parents wanted to give my brother was never really about money. It was about whether my family had learned anything. For years, they believed Ryan deserved more because he needed more. Grandpa understood something they didn't. Giving someone everything they demand doesn't make them stronger. Sometimes it only makes them demand more. My brother needed consequences. My parents needed boundaries. And I needed to stop proving my worth. The day my family finally discovered my secret, they also discovered something else. They discovered that Grandpa had never been choosing between his grandchildren. He had been protecting them both. He had been trying to make sure Ryan couldn't destroy himself. And he had been trying to make sure I didn't spend my life rescuing everyone else. The money changed my circumstances. But Grandpa's lesson changed me. And that was the real inheritance. One evening, years after everything happened, I returned to the community center alone. The sun was setting. The old workshop smelled like sawdust. I ran my hand across Grandpa's workbench. There were still tiny scratches in the wood from tools he had used decades earlier. I sat down. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice. People are like houses. I smiled. You can spend years decorating the outside. I finished the sentence aloud. But what matters is what's holding the walls together. I looked around the workshop. The walls were covered with photographs of people whose lives had changed because of this place. Young men who had learned trades. Single mothers who had learned bookkeeping. Teenagers who had discovered they were good with their hands. People who had been told they weren't enough. People who had been given another chance. That was Grandpa's legacy. Not the house. Not the money. Not the investment accounts. Not the inheritance. People. I pulled the old envelope from my bag. The one he had given me 10 years earlier. The envelope that had contained the secret. I had carried it with me for years. On the back, I had written one sentence. Some inherit money, some inherit responsibility. I placed it back in the drawer. Then I locked the workshop. As I walked toward my car, my phone rang. It was my mother. Hi, Mom. Where are you? At the center. She laughed. Of course you are. What? Your father and I were just talking about Grandpa. What about him? She said, he would be proud of you. I smiled. I hope so. He would. There was a pause. Then she said, Claire? Yeah? I know I can't change what happened. No. But I'm grateful you didn't let what we did turn you into someone bitter. I looked at the building. I almost did. What stopped you? I thought for a moment. Grandpa. She laughed through tears. Of course. Mom? Yes? I love you. She was silent. Then she said, I love you too. I ended the call. I sat in my car for a while. The sky was dark. The streetlights had come on. And I realized something. 10 years earlier, I had thought my greatest fear was losing my inheritance. It wasn't. My greatest fear had been losing my family, and for a while I did. But sometimes losing people temporarily is what teaches everyone how to value one another permanently. My parents learned that their children couldn't be ranked by need. Ryan learned that being loved didn't mean being rescued. I learned that I didn't have to earn love through sacrifice. And Grandpa's final lesson stayed with all of us. A family isn't measured by who gets the biggest piece of the inheritance. It's measured by what happens when there isn't enough to go around. Do people fight? Do they manipulate? Do they betray each other? Or do they remember that people matter more than property? My family failed that test once. But eventually, we learned how to take it again. And this time we passed. If there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, it's this. Never let someone convince you that protecting yourself makes you selfish. Never believe that because you're the responsible one. You should always be the one who sacrifices. And never confuse forgiveness with forgetting. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries. You can love your family and still say no. You can walk away from people without hating them. And sometimes the secret you've been carrying isn't meant to destroy someone. Sometimes it's meant to protect. The person you were before you became strong enough to stand on your own. My parents thought they were giving my inheritance to my brother. They thought I would eventually give in. They thought I was the weaker child because I was quieter. They were wrong. I wasn't weak. I was patient. I wasn't selfish. I was learning, and I wasn't holding on to Grandpa's inheritance because I wanted to be rich. I was holding on to it because I had finally understood what he had. Spent 10 years teaching me. Some things are worth protecting. Your dignity, your future, your peace, your name, your dreams, and sometimes, yourself. My grandfather left me millions of dollars. But the greatest thing he ever left me was the courage to say, No, you can't take what isn't yours. No, I won't keep rescuing you. No, I won't allow guilt to control me. No, I won't trade my peace for your approval. And finally, yes. Yes, I can forgive you. Yes, I can love you. Yes, we can begin again. But this time, we're going to build something stronger than inheritance. We're going to build trust. And that was the secret my family discovered far too late. The money was never the real inheritance. The real inheritance was the strength to know what you are worth.